The wheelchair sat motionless beside rain-battered windows, but rage twisted through Jin Huan's body like fire through dry wood. She'd walked away, the fifth woman in 4 months to abandon the broken man drowning in designer suits. He wasn't angry she'd left. He was furious she'd wasted his time. Time bleeding out faster than he could contain it. The other guests at Silver Moon Cafe pretended not to stare, but Jin felt their eyes like razor cuts against his skin. The infamous Jin Huan, ruthless architect of Seoul's most feared Korean syndicate, discarded like yesterday's newspaper. His jaw locked as he reached for his phone, not to beg her return, never that, but to summon his driver. This charade was finished. The entrance chimed. Huan didn't look immediately. He'd perfected the art of calculated indifference, letting the world revolve around him while he strategized 5 moves ahead. But something made him pause. A shift in atmospheric pressure, the sudden hush that descended when someone utterly wrong for places like this walked through the door. She stood framed in the doorway, raindrops catching warm cafe light on deep brown skin that seemed to glow from within. Natural coils framed her face, damp and wild from the storm raging outside. She wore a coat that had survived too many winters, shoes, practical, worn, completely wrong for this part of Seoul, squeaking slightly against polished marble as she approached the counter. Zara Bennett. He knew her name before she spoke it, had known for exactly 4 days since his intelligence network flagged her unusual search patterns on the dark web. She'd been hunting him. Carefully, professionally, but not carefully enough. The moment she'd started asking questions about syndicate operations in Gangnam's financial district, she'd become visible to him, touchable. Now she stood here, and she had absolutely no idea she'd just walked into a trap designed specifically for her. Zara felt his attention before she saw him. That crawling awareness born from years of tactical training, from surviving situations engineered to kill her. She kept her expression neutral, exhausted even as she moved toward the counter. She'd rehearsed this entrance obsessively, the tired woman seeking warmth and cheap coffee, nothing more threatening than that. But when her gaze finally swept the room with practiced casualness, it snagged on him like fabric on barbed wire. The man in the wheelchair stationed by the window, sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, dark eyes that didn't just observe. They dissected, cataloged, owned. Black hair styled with surgical precision despite the late hour, a suit that cost more than 8 months of her fabricated identity's rent. He sat perfectly motionless, but something coiled about him screamed predator, something in his absolute stillness that promised violence. Their eyes collided. The air thinned. "Miss." The barista's voice shattered the moment like a hammer through ice. "What can I get you?" Zara forced herself to look away, to smile, to inhabit her carefully constructed role. "Just a black coffee. Small. That's all I can afford tonight." The words emerged sharper than intended, edged with genuine exhaustion she'd been carrying for weeks, like stones in her pockets. The barista's expression softened with pity that made Zara want to scream. "Miss Bennett." The voice came from behind her, low, controlled, each syllable wrapped in a Korean accent that made her name sound like a death sentence being read aloud. She turned slowly, every survival instinct howling danger. The man in the wheelchair had moved closer, silent as falling snow. Up close, he was devastating. Not handsome. Handsome was too soft, too kind a word. He was carved from something harder, darker. Power barely leashed beneath expensive fabric and false fragility. "Sit down." It wasn't a request. Zara's training kicked in automatically. "I think you have me confused with—" "I know exactly who you are." Juan's voice dropped lower, meant only for her ears. The barista had suddenly discovered urgent tasks elsewhere. "I know why you're here. I know what you're searching for, and I know you've been hunting for 4 months." Her blood crystallized to ice. "Here's what happens next." He gestured to the empty chair across from him with one elegant hand, the movement graceful despite the wheelchair. "You sit. You act appropriately surprised when I offer you employment, and if you execute this correctly, you might actually survive until sunrise." Zara's mouth went desert dry. Every exit route she'd memorized became useless. He'd known the entire time, known and watched her circle closer like a mouse approaching cheese in a trap. And if I refuse? She forced the words past her constricted throat. Something that wasn't quite a smile touched his lips. Then you'll disappear before your coffee gets cold, and trust me, Miss Bennett, you won't enjoy the method. She sat. The chair held residual warmth. Someone had occupied it recently. His abandoned date. The realization that he'd orchestrated even that microscopic detail made her stomach clench. You've been searching for information about your sister's disappearance. Juan spoke quietly, fingers steepled beneath his chin like a scholar discussing philosophy. The attack on my convoy 9 years ago, the files that were sealed, the witnesses who vanished like smoke. Zara's hands trembled in her lap. She pressed them flat against her thighs, refusing to display additional weakness. How? I own the city's shadows, Miss Bennett. When someone starts excavating my past, I notice. He paused, letting the weight settle. Your search patterns were excellent. Professional, nearly invisible. Nearly. What do you want? I want to hire you. The absurdity struck her like a physical blow. You want to hire me? The woman who's been investigating you? Not investigating, infiltrating. He corrected her with clinical precision. You've been constructing a cover identity for 4 months, establishing patterns, creating paper trails designed to position you close to me. Admirable work. But I'm offering something superior to infiltration. What? Legitimacy. Juan leaned forward slightly. She caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something else, gun oil maybe, or the metallic tang of violence barely contained. Work for me as my personal assistant. You'll access files you could never reach through subterfuge. You'll learn everything you want to know about that night 9 years ago. In exchange for what? Your loyalty. The word hung between them like a suspended blade. There's a traitor in my organization, someone close. Someone trusted. I need someone I can trust. Someone with skills beyond filing paperwork. Someone who knows how to survive. You don't trust me. No? His honesty was brutal. But I trust your motivation. You want answers about your sister. I want to find a snake in my house. Our interests align. Zara stared at him, her mind racing through scenarios, outcomes, traps, nested within traps. And if I refuse? Then I'll have wasted more time I don't have. Juan's expression hardened, becoming something carved from stone. And you'll spend the rest of your very short life looking over your shoulder, wondering when I'll decide you know too much. The threat wasn't empty. She could see it in how his hand rested casually near his hip, where a weapon would be holstered, in how the cafe had subtly emptied around them. She hadn't noticed when the other patrons departed, but they were alone now except for the barista who disappeared into the back. Why me? Her voice emerged steadier than she felt. You could hire anyone. For the first time, something flickered in his dark eyes. Not warmth. Jin Juan didn't do warmth, but recognition, perhaps, understanding. Because you survived, he said simply, as though it explained everything. 9 years ago, when my men destroyed that safe house, there were no survivors according to official files. Everyone died, but here you stand. The room tilted. You ordered the attack that killed them. Yes. No apology, no justification, just brutal, honest fact. And now you want me to work for you. Her laugh came out sharp, bitter, broken. I want you to survive. He corrected her again. Because if you're intelligent, Miss Bennett, you'll realize the answers you need exist behind me, not through me, and the only way you'll obtain them is to accept exactly what I'm offering. Zara looked at him, really looked past the expensive suit and the wheelchair and the barely leashed violence. She saw calculation, desperation, maybe, though he concealed it expertly, and beneath everything, that same exhaustion she carried like extra weight, the burden of time running out. The salary is $120,000 a year. Juan slid a business card across the table. His fingers were long, elegant, scarred along the knuckles. Health insurance, security, and most importantly, answers. She picked up the card. Heavy cardstock, simple black lettering, an address in Gangnam's financial district where buildings cost more than lives. "Come to this address tomorrow morning, 900 hours." He began rolling backward, dismissing her with the movement. "Bring nothing. Wear something professional, and Miss Bennett—" She looked up. "Don't make me regret this, Mercy. I don't offer it twice." Then he was gone, the wheelchair gliding toward a back exit she hadn't seen. Two men in dark suits materialized from nowhere, flanking him. She realized with a chill that she'd never been alone with him at all. He'd been protected the entire time, while she'd been utterly exposed. The barista returned, setting a small coffee in front of her. "It's on the house," she said softly, avoiding Zara's eyes as though eye contact might prove contagious. Zara wrapped her hands around the cup, feeling warmth seep into frozen fingers. The business card sat before her, black letters stark against white. Gin Holdings and Acquisitions. Tomorrow morning, 900 hours. The choice that wasn't really a choice at all. She'd spent 4 months hunting him. Now he was offering to let her walk directly into his world, into his inner sanctum. Every instinct screamed trap, but those same instincts had kept her alive for 9 years, and they were telling her something else too, something terrifying and true. This was her only chance, the only path to the truth about that night, about her sister, about why some people survived when everyone else burned. Zara drank the coffee in 3 scalding gulps that burned her throat, pocketed the card, and walked back into the rain. Behind her, Silver Moon Cafe's warm lights faded. Ahead, somewhere in Seoul's glittering darkness, answers waited. And tomorrow morning she would walk straight into the devil's domain and pray she was strong enough to walk back out. The following morning, as Zara stood outside the glass tower in Gangnam's financial district, rain hammering her borrowed umbrella, she couldn't stop thinking about the last time she'd seen her sister. 9 years ago, the night everything ended. The night men had come. The night she'd learned what it meant to survive when everyone else didn't. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. No hallway, no warning, just marble floors gleaming like black ice and floor-to-ceiling windows framing Seoul 50 stories below. Zara stepped out, her borrowed heels clicking too loud in the silence, and felt the space swallow her whole. This wasn't mere luxury. This was power made tangible. Clean lines and cold surfaces. Leather furniture positioned with mathematical precision, art on the walls she recognized from research, stolen pieces, most of them liberated from collections that no longer existed because their owners had crossed Jinhuan. The air smelled expensive, rich leather and something cleaner, sharper, like hospital air, sterile and controlled. Beneath it, barely perceptible, was the metallic tang of gun oil. She'd smelled it enough times to recognize it instantly, to know that somewhere within arm's reach of wherever Juan sat, death waited in a holster. "Miss Bennett." His voice came from shadows near the windows. "You're early." She turned. He sat behind a desk carved from a single piece of dark wood, his wheelchair positioned perfectly to catch morning light. It made him look softer somehow, more human, until you met his eyes and realized softness was a lie he wore like armor. "I don't like wasting time," Zara said, keeping her voice level. "Good, neither do I." He gestured to a chair across from him. "Sit." She sat. The leather was cold through her slacks. The desk between them felt both like protection and like a trap, keeping her at distance while ensuring she couldn't run. "Before we begin, there's someone you should meet." Juan pressed a button on his desk. "Dante, please come in." The door behind her opened so silently she only knew because the air pressure changed. Footsteps approached, measured, confident. Then a man appeared in her peripheral vision. Dante was beautiful the way expensive things are beautiful. Polished, perfect, utterly cold. Tall and lean in a suit that fit like a second skin, his face angular and sharp, his smile warm in a way that made her skin crawl because it didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Bennett." He extended his hand. "Welcome. I'm Dante Choi, Mr. Jin's second in command." His hand was dry, his grip calculated, firm enough to show strength, gentle enough to suggest courtesy. Zara returned it with equal pressure, watching his eyes the whole time. They were dark, assessing, cataloging her in a heartbeat, and filing her away as irrelevant. Mr. Choi handles operations, Juan said, tone neutral. You'll report to me, but many tasks will require his coordination. Treat him as you would treat me. The message was clear. Dante was untouchable, protected, likely dangerous. Understood, Zara said. Dante's smile widened fractionally. I'm sure we'll work wonderfully together. He turned to Juan. The morning briefing is ready when you are. Give us a moment. The dismissal was absolute. Dante's smile never faltered, but something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, maybe, or calculation. He bowed his head slightly and left, the door closing with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. Zara waited. She'd learned long ago that silence was a weapon, and the person who spoke first usually lost. Juan studied her for a long moment, fingers steepled beneath his chin. You don't like him. It wasn't a question. I don't know him, she replied carefully. But you don't like him. Juan's lips curved slightly. Good instincts. Dante is efficient, loyal, and utterly ruthless. He's also the reason you're here. You think he's the traitor? I know he is. Juan's voice was flat, certain. What I don't know is who he's working for or how deep his network runs. That's what you're going to discover. Zara's pulse quickened. You want me to investigate your second in command? I want you to observe, document, and when the moment comes, prove it beyond doubt. He leaned forward slightly. Your workspace is the outer office. You'll have access to standard files, communications logs, scheduling systems, enough to look busy, enough to be useful. The real work happens after hours when the building is quiet and Dante thinks he's safe. Juan's eyes held hers. You'll need to be very, very careful, Miss Bennett. Dante suspects everyone. It's what makes him valuable. It's also what makes him dangerous. She nodded slowly, mind already mapping the space, calculating sightlines and security measures. What am I looking for specifically? Financial discrepancies, communication patterns, meetings that don't appear on official schedules. He paused. Evidence of contact with the Park family. The name landed like a stone in still water. The Park family, the rival syndicate that had been slowly encroaching on Juan's territory for the past year. If Dante is feeding them information, Zara said quietly, that would be a death sentence. Juan finished. Yes, it would. The weight of what he was asking settled over her. She wasn't just infiltrating his organization. She was being weaponized against his most trusted lieutenant. One wrong move and she'd be caught between two killers with nowhere to run. And my sister's file? The question came out harder than she intended. When you give me proof of Dante's betrayal, I'll give you everything I have. His expression didn't change. That's the deal, Miss Bennett. Your answer's for his head. She wanted to argue, to demand the file now, to tell him she didn't make deals with men who ordered massacres. But the truth was simpler and more brutal. She had no choice. The file was here somewhere, in this fortress of marble and shadows, and the only way to get it was to play his game. Where do I start? She asked. Juan smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Your workstation. Get familiar with the systems. At 1800 hours, everyone leaves except security and myself. That's when you begin. He pressed another button on his desk. The elevator chimed. Your badge and access codes are at the front desk. Don't lose them. And Miss Bennett. He waited until she stood, until she was almost at the elevator. Dante is watching you already. He's been watching since you stepped off the elevator. Remember that. Zara's blood turned cold. She glanced around the vast space, seeing nothing but feeling it now, the weight of hidden cameras, of eyes she couldn't see. Understood, she said. The elevator doors closed, and she was alone with her reflection in polished steel. Her face looked calm, composed, professional. Inside, her heart hammered against her ribs like something caged and desperate to escape. She'd walked into the cage willingly. Now she just had to survive it long enough to get what she came for. The outer office was smaller, but no less intimidating. A glass desk positioned to face Juan's closed door. 2 monitors already powered on. A phone system more complicated than anything she'd used in her cover jobs. The chair was leather, expensive, positioned so anyone entering would see her first. a gatekeeper, a shield, a target. Zara sat, logged in with the credentials she'd been given, and began learning the rhythms of Jin Huan's empire. By noon, she'd memorized the organizational structure. By 1400 hours, she'd identified 3 irregularities in Dante's expense reports, small enough to be mistakes, large enough to be intentional. By 1600 hours, she'd found a communication log showing Dante receiving calls from an unlisted number at exactly 200 hours every Wednesday for the past 3 months. At 1755, the office began emptying. Assistants, analysts, enforcers, they filed out in a silent parade, none meeting her eyes. By 1802, she was alone except for the 2 guards stationed at the elevator and Juan still in his office, visible through glass walls like a king surveying his kingdom. At 1815, his door opened. "Come," he said simply. Zara stood, crossed the space between them, and stepped into his domain. The smell of gun oil was stronger here. She saw it now, a compact pistol resting on the shelf behind his desk, close enough for him to reach, even seated. The message was clear. Vulnerability was strategic, but helplessness was a lie. "What did you find?" Juan asked. She told him. Watched his expression remain perfectly neutral as she detailed the discrepancies, the calls, the small inconsistencies that wove together into a pattern of deception. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You work quickly," he said finally. "You hired me for results." "I did." He rolled his opposite chair back slightly, creating space between them. "But understanding the problem isn't the same as solving it. I need proof that will hold up when I bring this to the family council. Recordings, documents, something Dante can't explain away." "That will take time," Zara said. "We don't have much." His voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. "Dante is accelerating his plans. I can feel it. Whatever he's building toward, it's coming soon." "Then I'll work faster." Juan studied her, his dark eyes unreadable. "Why did you really come here, Miss Bennett? And don't tell me it's just about your sister. I've read people my entire life. You carry something heavier than grief." The question cut deeper than she expected. Zara's jaw tightened. "You said you'd give me the file when I proved Dante's betrayal. That's the only reason that matters." She didn't add the rest, that the file was the only surviving thread from a woman who'd vanished without explanation, leaving behind a younger sister and no official record of death, only silence that felt engineered. Liar. The word was soft, almost gentle, and somehow that made it worse. "You want revenge," Juan continued. "Someone you loved died in that safe house 9 years ago. Not your sister, someone else. That's what drives you. That's why you'll risk everything." Zara's hands clenched into fists. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're willing to work for the man who ordered the attack. I know you're willing to lie, to infiltrate, to become whatever you need to be to get answers." He leaned forward. "That's not just love, Miss Bennett. That's guilt. You survived and someone else didn't. And now you're trying to make that mean something." "Stop." Her voice cracked. "Why?" "Because I'm right." His expression was implacable. "I understand guilt better than most. It's why I'm still alive when I should have died in the explosion that damaged my spine. It's why I built this empire from a wheelchair. Guilt is the most powerful motivator there is. Stronger than love, stronger than fear. So yes, Miss Bennett, I know exactly why you're here." The air between them was electric, charged with truths neither wanted to acknowledge. Zara felt stripped bare under his gaze, every carefully constructed lie peeled away until only raw truth remained. "My sister," she whispered. "She died in that safe house. She was 17. Juan's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "I'm sorry." "No, you're not." Zara's laugh was bitter. "You ordered the attack. You don't get to be sorry." "You're right. I don't." He held her gaze. "But I can give you what you came for. The file. The truth about what happened that night. The names of everyone involved." He paused. "In exchange, you give me Dante. We both get our justice." It was a devil's bargain, trading one death for another. Megan knew she should walk away, should refuse to let him use her sister's memory as leverage. But she also knew she wouldn't. "Deal," she said. Juan nodded once. "Then let's begin." 5 days bled into one another like wounds that wouldn't close. Zara learned the patterns of the penthouse, when guards changed shifts, which cameras had blind spots, how Dante moved through the space like he owned it, because in every way except officially he did. She documented everything, photographed files with a camera hidden in her watch, recorded conversations with equipment so sophisticated it picked up whispers through reinforced glass, followed money trails that twisted through shell companies and offshore accounts until her eyes burned and her hands shook from too much coffee and not enough sleep. And through it all, Juan watched. Not obviously, he was too controlled for that. But she felt his attention like a physical weight, felt him measuring her against some internal standard she couldn't see. He rarely spoke to her directly during office hours, maintaining professional distance between boss and assistant. But after 1,800 hours, when the building emptied, he'd call her into his office and they'd sit in dim light reviewing her findings like scholars studying ancient texts. It was during those hours that Zara began to understand him. Not like him, she could never like a man who'd ordered her sister's death, but understand. He thought in layers, in contingencies upon contingencies. Every word he spoke was calculated. Every gesture meant something. He was a man who'd learned that vulnerability was death, so he'd armored himself in control so absolute it had become a cage. She understood that kind of prison. She'd built one herself. On the 6th night, Juan leaned back in his chair and studied the documents she'd spread across his desk. Financial records showing Dante's accounts receiving payments from a company that didn't exist. Communication logs proving he'd met with Park family representatives 3 times in the past month. Security footage she'd spliced together showing him accessing files he had no authorization to view. "It's good work," Juan said finally, "but it's not enough." Zara's frustration flared hot. "It proves he's been in contact with your enemies. It proves he's stealing information. What more do you need?" "Context." He tapped one of the documents. "These payments could be explained as legitimate business expenses if he has the right documentation. The meetings could be dismissed as intelligence gathering. The file access could be attributed to his position. I need something that can't be rationalized away." "Like what?" "Like proof he's planning to move against me." Juan's voice was flat. "Evidence of an assassination attempt, a recorded conversation where he explicitly commits treason, something that would force the council's hand. That could take weeks. Then we work for weeks." He met her eyes. "Unless you're tired of looking for your answers." The challenge was clear. Zara wanted to rage at him, at the impossible standards he'd set, at the way he dangled her sister's file like bait she'd never reach. But she'd learned something in these 6 days. Jin Huan didn't make empty threats. If he said she needed more proof, she needed more proof. "I'll keep looking," she said. "I know you will." He reached for a folder on his desk, movements precise despite the wheelchair. "These are security protocols for the lower levels, areas even Dante doesn't have access to. If he's planning something, he'll need to breach one of these zones. Memorize them." He held the folder out. Zara reached for it. Their fingers brushed. The contact was brief, a split second of skin against skin, but it sent electricity racing up her arm. She froze, folder half grasped, and saw Juan's eyes sharpen with sudden focus. He'd felt it too. His grip on the folder tightened fractionally, keeping her hand in place. His thumb shifted, pressing against the inside of her wrist. His expression changed, went cold and distant, and somehow more intense. "What's this?" His voice was soft, dangerous. Zara's pulse hammered. "What?" "This scar." He traced it with his thumb, a precise raised line of tissue running from her wrist to her palm. "I've seen this pattern before. It's a pressure cut, the kind you get when someone ties your hands behind your back with steel wire and you struggle hard enough to tear skin. I've seen these exact marks on corpses." The room tilted. Zara's breath came short and sharp. "Let go." "When?" he demanded. "When did this happen?" "Let go," she repeated, putting steel in her voice. He released her. The absence of his touch was somehow worse than the contact, leaving her wrist burning where his thumb had pressed. Zara stepped back, cradling her arm against her chest. "It happened 9 years ago, the night of the safe house attack. They tied us up before they burned the building. I got free. My sister didn't." The silence that followed was absolute. Juan stared at her, expression unreadable, but she saw his hands tighten on the armrests of his wheelchair until his knuckles went white. "You were there," he said finally, "in the safe house, when my men came. Yes. You survived the fire. Obviously. How old were you?" 19. The word tasted like ashes. "My sister was 17. We were collateral damage in your war." Juan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer but no less controlled. The order was to eliminate the Park family's intelligence cell. We had confirmation they were using that location to coordinate attacks against my people. Civilian casualties were supposed to be minimal. "Minimal," Zara repeated. "My sister burning to death while I listened to her scream was minimal." "No," he met her eyes. "It was unacceptable, and if I could change it, I would. But you can't. No, I can't." He rolled his chair back slightly, creating distance. "The scar. You got free, but the wire had already cut deep. You would have bled out without treatment." "Someone helped me." Zara's voice was mechanical, reciting facts to avoid feeling them. "Pulled me from the rubble, got me to a clinic that didn't ask questions. I never saw their face." "But you remember the hands." She froze. "What?" "The hands of the person who saved you." Juan's expression was impossible to read. "You remember them, don't you?" She did. God help her, she did. Strong hands with scars along the knuckles. Hands that had moved with precision despite the chaos, cutting the wire, stanching the bleeding, carrying her weight like she weighed nothing. "Why does it matter?" she asked. "Because I was there that night." Juan's voice was quiet. "After the fire, I surveyed the damage personally to ensure the mission was complete, and I found a girl trapped in the rubble with her hands cut to ribbons, still trying to dig through concrete to reach her sister's body. The world stopped. That was you," Zara whispered. "That was me." He held her gaze. "I pulled you out, took you to a clinic I trusted, paid for your treatment, and then I left because staying would have put you in more danger than you were already in." "You're lying." But even as she said it, she knew it was true. Knew it in the way his hands had felt familiar when he touched her wrist. Knew it in the way he'd understood exactly where the scar came from. "I don't lie about things like this." Juan's expression was grave. "You survived because I chose to save you instead of finishing the job. And your sister died because my men were too thorough, and I was too late to stop them." Zara's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the chair across from his desk, mind reeling. 9 years she'd spent hating him. 9 years of planning this infiltration, of imagining his death 1,000 different ways, and all along he'd been the one who'd saved her life. "Why?" The word came out broken. "Because you reminded me of someone I'd lost." His voice was quiet. "And because even monsters have lines they won't cross. Leaving a 19-year-old girl to die in the rubble was mine." "But you let my sister die." "Yes." He didn't flinch from it. "I did, and I've lived with that for 9 years, the same as you." The weight of it crushed her. All the rage, all the grief, all the years of planning revenge. They didn't disappear, but they shifted, became complicated, became something she didn't know how to carry anymore. "The file about my sister," she said finally. "You've had it all along." "Yes. And you knew I'd come looking for you eventually." "I suspected." He leaned forward. "But I also knew that when you did, I could offer you something more valuable than revenge." "What?" "Purpose." He gestured to the document spread across his desk. "Help me end this. Help me destroy Dante before he destroys everything I've built. And when it's over, you'll have your answers. All of them. Including the name of the man who gave the order to burn that safe house while families were still inside. You gave the order. I gave the order to eliminate a military target. Someone else decided civilians were acceptable losses." His eyes were hard. "That someone is still alive, still in my organization, and he's working with Dante." The revelation hit like a physical blow. "You think Dante was involved in my sister's death?" "I know he was." Juan's voice was ice. He was the one who confirmed the intelligence about the safe house. He was the one who assured me it was a legitimate military target. And he was the one who recommended using incendiary charges instead of precision strikes. Why? Zara's hands shook. Why would he do that? Because even then, he was working for the Park family, setting me up to commit an atrocity that would weaken my position. He paused. Your sister's death, your suffering, your scar. Dante orchestrated all of it. I was just the weapon he aimed. The rage that flooded through Zara was pure and clean and focused. Not at Juan, not anymore, but at the man in the outer office, the man who smiled and bowed and pretended loyalty while engineering massacres. Tell me what you need, she said. I need proof he's planning to kill me soon, before the family council meets next month. Juan's expression was grave. And I need you to trust me completely, because what comes next is going to require you to put your life in my hands. Zara looked at him, really looked past the wheelchair and the expensive suit and the cold control. She saw exhaustion. She saw rage that matched her own. And beneath it all, she saw something like regret. Not enough to absolve him, not enough to erase what he'd done, but enough to make him human. I trust you, she said. It was the first honest thing she'd said since walking into his world, and from the way his expression shifted, something softening in his eyes for just a moment, she knew he recognized the weight of it. Then let's make him pay, Juan said quietly. Zara nodded and felt the war inside her shift from revenge to something sharper, cleaner, justice. Not for herself, not even for Juan, but for the 17-year-old girl who'd burned alive because a traitor had decided she was expendable, for her sister, for all of them. The hunt had begun. The evidence came together like pieces of broken glass, sharp, jagged, impossible to handle without drawing blood. Zara worked 18-hour days, sleeping in the small apartment Juan had provided 2 blocks from the tower. Her dreams were haunted by flames and her sister's screams. Every morning she woke with her wrist aching where the old scar tissue pulled tight, a phantom reminder of the night everything had burned. But now she knew the truth, and truth was its own kind of weapon. 2 weeks into her service, on the night before the council meeting, Zara spread the final pieces of evidence across Juan's desk. It was 2000 hours. The city below was alive with lights, but the penthouse was silent except for the quiet hum of climate control and the softer sound of their breathing. This is it, she said, voice steady despite exhaustion pulling at her bones. Everything you asked for. Juan wheeled closer, dark eyes scanning the documents with the focused intensity of a predator tracking prey. Financial records showing payments from the Park family to shell corporations Dante controlled. Encrypted communications she'd decrypted, using tools she'd learned from people whose names she'd never speak aloud. Security footage showing Dante meeting with known park enforcers in locations far from any legitimate business. And the final piece, the one that had taken days to acquire and nearly gotten her killed, a recorded conversation between Dante and a Park family lieutenant discussing the logistics of eliminating Juan during the family council meeting. The building has structural weaknesses on the 3rd floor, Dante's voice said from the small recorder, a gas line that runs through the council chamber. If the ignition is timed correctly, it will look like an accident. Old building, poor maintenance. Tragic loss of leadership. And you're certain Jin will be in the chamber? The park lieutenant asked. He never misses council meetings. His pride won't allow it. Dante's voice was smooth, calm, as casual as if discussing dinner plans. Once he's dead, I'll assume emergency leadership. 3 months to consolidate power. 6 months to transfer key assets to your family. 1 year to complete the merger. The council won't accept you automatically. They will, if I'm the only option standing. I've already arranged for the other candidates to be indisposed during the incident. The recording ended. Silence filled the penthouse like water filling a drowning man's lungs. Juan sat perfectly still, hands resting on the armrests of his wheelchair, expression carved from stone. Zara watched him, saw the minute tension in his jaw, the way his breathing had gone shallow and controlled. When? He asked finally. The council meeting is in 2 days. And this recording? How did you get it? Dante's car. He has it swept for bugs daily, but I placed a device in the air conditioning system that only activates when it detects his voice pattern. She paused. He won't know it's there until it's too late. Did he see you? No. Are you certain? Yes. She met his eyes. I'm good at this, Juan. You hired me because I'm good at this. It was the first time she'd used his name without the formal Mr. Jin. The intimacy of it hung between them, unexpected and heavy. His expression shifted, something flickering in his dark eyes that might have been approval or might have been something more dangerous. You're better than good, he said quietly. You're exceptional. The compliment shouldn't have warmed her. She was here for justice, for her sister, for the truth about that night 9 years ago. Not for the approval of a man who'd built an empire on violence and fear, but it warmed her anyway. What do we do now? She asked, pushing past the dangerous flutter in her chest. Now we spring our own trap. Juan rolled back from the desk, turning to face the windows. The city glittered below, and his reflection in the glass looked like a king surveying his kingdom. The council meeting happens in 2 days. Dante will move before then. He'll need to ensure his other rivals are eliminated first. We'll let him think he's succeeding. And then I kill him, Zara said. No emotion, no heat, just flat certainty. No. Juan turned back to face her. I need to do it in a way that proves his betrayal to the council. Evidence they can't ignore. Confession they can't rationalize away. The recording can be dismissed as manufactured. Audio manipulation is too easy now. He paused. No, I need something more visceral, more undeniable. Zara's stomach tightened. What are you planning? I need you to help me stand. The words were so unexpected it took her a moment to process them. What? Help me stand, he repeated, voice low and intense. I need to show you something, and I can't do it from this chair. Her heart hammered. She'd seen him in the wheelchair for weeks now, had watched him maneuver with practiced grace, had assumed the disability was as real as everyone believed it to be. But now, looking at him, she remembered what he'd said about strategic vulnerability, about maintaining appearances to lull his enemies into complacency. D is on the lower levels, Juan said, referring to the head of his security. He won't return for another hour. We're alone, completely alone. He held her gaze. Trust me, please. The please undid her. This man who commanded armies, who inspired terror with a whisper, was asking, not ordering, asking. Zara moved around the desk, stood in front of him. His hands gripped the armrests, and she saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his breathing had changed. What do I do? She asked. Give me your hands. She did. His fingers closed around hers, warm, strong, scarred along the knuckles, just like she remembered from that night 9 years ago. The contact sent electricity racing up her arms. When I move, support my weight, he said. Don't pull, just be my anchor. She nodded, felt his grip tighten, and then he pushed. The movement was agony. She saw it in the way his jaw clenched, the way sweat beaded on his forehead, the way his breath hissed between his teeth. His legs shook, from disuse or from pain. She couldn't tell, and for a moment she thought he would collapse. But he didn't. Inch by inch, he rose from the wheelchair, straightened, stood. Zara's breath caught. She'd always suspected the chair might be partly strategic, but the sheer visible agony he endured proved the real cost. The explosion had damaged him severely. This was no simple deception. He was taller than she'd imagined, broader. Without the wheelchair between them, she could see the full line of his body, lean muscle beneath the expensive suit, power held in check by will alone. You can walk, she whispered, barely. His voice was strained. The explosion damaged my spine. I can stand for short periods, walk maybe 10 steps before the pain becomes unbearable. But I can do it. Why hide it? Because weakness invites attack. His hands were still locked with hers, and she realized he was using her to stay upright. The wheelchair makes people underestimate me, makes them think I'm broken, makes them careless. Like Dante. Exactly like Dante. He took a gasping breath. I've maintained this illusion for 3 years. Let everyone believe I was disabled completely. Let them think I was weak, and all the while I was watching, waiting, building the strength to stand when the moment came. And the moment is now. Yes. His eyes burned into hers. When Dante comes for me, I need to be standing, need to show the council that I'm not the broken thing he thinks I am, that I'm still their leader, still strong enough to protect them. Zara understood. This wasn't just about killing Dante, it was about theater, about demonstrating dominance so absolute that no one would dare question it. "When will you reveal it?" she asked. "At the council meeting, after Dante's planted his bomb, after he thinks he's won." Juan's grip tightened on her hands. "I'll let him believe I'm trapped. Let him approach to gloat, and then I'll stand, walk to him, and end him with my bare hands while the council watches." It was brutal, poetic, the perfect culmination of 3 years of careful planning. "You'll need training," Zara said, "to build the strength back. 10 steps isn't enough." "I know." He met her eyes. "That's why I'm telling you now. I need you to help me. Every night after everyone leaves, I need you to be my anchor while I learn to walk again." The request was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with trust. He was giving her the ultimate vulnerability, showing her his weakness, putting his life in her hands. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you're the only person in this building who wants me alive." His smile was grim. "Everyone else either wants me dead or wants to use me. You just want the truth. That makes you the safest person here." It was a terrible reason, a cynical reason, and it was completely accurate. "All right," she said, "I'll help you." Something shifted in his expression, gratitude maybe, or relief. His grip on her hands relaxed fractionally, and she realized he'd been bracing for rejection. "We start tonight," he said, "after day's patrol, midnight." "Midnight," she agreed. He nodded once, and then with agonizing slowness, he lowered himself back into the wheelchair. The moment his weight left her hands, she felt the absence like a cold wind. Her palms tingled where his skin had touched hers. Juan sagged back, face pale, sweat dampening his collar. "Leave the documents," he said, voice rough with exhaustion. "I'll secure them. Go home. Rest. You'll need your strength." Zara wanted to argue, to stay, to make sure he was all right, but she recognized dismissal when she heard it. He'd shown her something profound and now needed space to recover from the vulnerability. She left without another word, but as the elevator descended, she pressed her palms together and felt the ghost of his touch burning against her skin. At midnight, she returned. The penthouse was dark except for a single lamp in Juan's office. He sat in the wheelchair, changed into simple black clothing, no suit, no armor of expensive fabric, just a man preparing for a battle that would take weeks instead of seconds. "Ready?" he asked. Zara crossed to him, offered her hands, and together they began. The first night he managed 5 steps before the pain drove him back to the chair. The second night, 7. By the 4th night, he could walk the length of his office, 12 steps before his legs gave out. Each night, Zara was his anchor. She learned the rhythm of his breathing, the warning signs when pain was about to overwhelm him, the exact pressure needed to support without insulting his pride. And each night, the intimacy of it grew. Not romance, nothing so simple, but a connection forged in shared purpose and vulnerability that felt more binding than any promise. On the 5th night, after he'd successfully walked 15 steps and collapsed back into his chair with a gasp of triumph, he looked up at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Thank you," he said simply. "You're paying me," she replied, but there was no heat in it. "Not for this." His hand caught hers before she could step away. "For this, you're doing it because you choose to. That's worth more than money." Zara's throat tightened. She didn't want to acknowledge what was happening between them, didn't want to name the way her heart raced when he touched her, or the way she found herself thinking about him during the hours they were apart. He was the man who'd ordered the attack that killed her sister. Nothing could erase that. But he was also the man who'd pulled her from the rubble, who'd saved her life when he could have ended it. "The council meeting is tomorrow," she said, pulling her hand. "Free. Are you ready?" "Almost." He rolled the chair to his safe, opened it with quick, precise movements, and pulled out a file. "This is yours. Everything I have about that night. Names, orders, evidence." Zara's heart stopped. "You said you'd give it to me after—" "I know." He held the file out. "But I also know that promises made under duress aren't really promises. You've earned this regardless of what happens tomorrow." She took it with trembling hands. The file was thick, heavy with the weight of 9 years of grief. "Why now?" she asked. "Because if something goes wrong tomorrow, I want you to have it." His expression was grave. "And because you trusted me enough to help me walk. I should trust you enough to give you what you came for." Zara clutched the file to her chest, felt tears prick her eyes, and blinked them away furiously. "Don't die tomorrow," she said, and her voice was raw. "I don't intend to." He met her eyes. "But if I do, finish this. Make sure Dante pays. Make sure the council knows what he did. Juan, promise me." "I promise." The words came out fierce. "But you're not going to die. You're going to walk into that council chamber and you're going to destroy him. And then we're going to figure out what the hell happens next." His smile was small, surprised, and achingly genuine. "What happens next?" he repeated softly. I liked the sound of that. So did she. More than she should. More than was safe. Zara left with the file clutched against her heart and the terrifying knowledge that somewhere along the way she'd stopped seeing Jin Huan as a target and started seeing him as something far more dangerous, as someone worth saving. The council meeting was set for 1400 hours in the old building on the east side, a relic from the syndicate's founding days, all dark wood and darker history. Zara arrived at noon, 2 hours early, dressed in the crisp black suit Juan had provided and carrying enough concealed weapons to start a small war. She wasn't supposed to be here. Assistants didn't attend council meetings, but Juan had been explicit. She was to position herself in the observation gallery above the chamber, hidden from view but close enough to act if everything went wrong. The building smelled like old smoke and older secrets. Zara made her way through corridors, nodding to guards who'd been briefed to expect her, and climbed narrow stairs to the gallery. The space was barely more than a balcony, enclosed by ornate wooden screens that allowed her to see into the chamber below while remaining invisible. She settled into position, checked her weapons, and waited. At 13:45, the council members began arriving. 11 men and 2 women, all of them old enough to have survived decades in a business where most died young. They took seats around the massive circular table, faces carved from stone, eyes calculating. At 13:55, Dante entered. He looked perfect. Expensive suit, warm smile, every inch the loyal second in command. He greeted each council member with practiced deference, made small talk about family and business, and gave no indication that beneath the chamber, a bomb was waiting to reduce them all to ash. At 1400 exactly, Juan arrived. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to the door as he wheeled himself in, face impassive, movements controlled. He looked exactly as he always did, contained, untouchable, a king in all but name. Zara's heart hammered. She knew what was hidden beneath that carefully maintained facade, knew the pain each movement caused him, knew that tonight, after this was over, they'd return to the penthouse and he'd collapse into her arms, exhausted and triumphant, if he survived. "Gentlemen, ladies," Juan's voice carried through the chamber, "thank you for coming. We have much to discuss." The meeting began. Business matters, territory disputes, profit margins, alliance negotiations, standard syndicate politics. Zara watched Dante carefully, saw the way his eyes kept flicking to his watch, saw the tension in his shoulders despite his calm expression. He was waiting. The bomb was set to detonate at 14:30. 30 minutes to get through preliminary business and excuse himself on some pretext, leaving the council to die while he established his alibi. At 14:15, Zara's earpiece crackled. Day's voice, barely a whisper. "Bomb located, 3rd floor gas line, exactly where the recording said. Disarming now." She touched her own mic twice in acknowledgement, felt her breathing ease slightly. One threat neutralized, but Dante wouldn't rely on a single method. Men like him always had contingencies. At 14:20, Dante stood. "My apologies, but I need to take an urgent call. 5 minutes." He left the chamber. Zara tracked his movement through the screens, watched him walk down the corridor, pull out his phone, make a call. His expression was calm, but she'd learned to read the micro-expressions beneath the mask. He was confused. The bomb should have detonated by now. At 14:25, he returned, took his seat, and Zara saw it, the slight bulge beneath his jacket. Not a phone, a weapon. He was going to do it himself. Her hand went to her own gun. Every muscle tensed. In the chamber below, Juan was speaking. "Which brings us to matters of internal security. There have been concerns raised about loyalty, about members of this organization working with our enemies." Dante's expression didn't change, but Zara saw his hand drift toward his jacket. "I have evidence," Juan continued, voice even, "of systematic betrayal, financial records, communications, recorded conversations." "Sir," Dante's voice was smooth, "perhaps we should discuss this in private." "No." Juan's tone was absolute. "The council needs to hear this, needs to understand the depth of the rot." He gestured. Day entered carrying a tablet, set it on the table, pressed play. Dante's voice filled the chamber, discussing the bombing, the murder of the council, the transfer of power. Every word a nail in his coffin. For 3 seconds no one moved. Then chaos. Dante surged to his feet, gun appearing in his hand with practiced speed. But he didn't aim at Juan. He aimed at the tablet, at the evidence, trying to destroy it before. Zara moved. She'd calculated the angle earlier, mapped the trajectory. One shot through the decorative screen, carefully placed to disarm without killing. She needed him alive, needed him to confess. The bullet took him in the shoulder. Dante spun, his gun clattering to the floor, face contorting with shock and rage. And Juan stood. The effect was instantaneous. Every person in the chamber froze, staring at the man who'd just risen from his wheelchair like Lazarus from the tomb. Juan's face was white with pain, hands gripping the edge of the table. But he was standing. 3 years, he said quietly. 3 years I let you think I was broken. Let you think I was weak. Let you plan and scheme and betray while I watched and waited. He took a step, then another, each movement agonizing but deliberate, closing the distance between himself and Dante. You thought the wheelchair made me vulnerable. You thought I couldn't defend myself. You were wrong. Dante clutched his wounded shoulder, backing away. The council will never accept. The council will accept what I tell them to accept. Juan's voice was ice. Because unlike you, I've earned their loyalty. I've bled for this family, built it, protected it, while you sold us piece by piece to our enemies. He was close enough now to touch Dante, close enough to kill him, but he didn't. Instead, he turned to the council. 9 years ago, I ordered an attack on a Park family safe house. I was told it was a legitimate military target. I was told civilian casualties would be minimal. Both were lies. 17 people died that night, including women and children, because the intelligence was falsified, because someone wanted to make me look like a monster. His eyes found Dante. You gave me that intelligence. You confirmed the target. You recommended incendiary charges. You orchestrated a massacre and let me take the blame. You have no proof, Dante started. I have a witness. Juan looked up at the gallery. Miss Bennett, please join us. Zara stood, descended the stairs, entered the chamber with her gun still in hand and the eyes of the council tracking her every move. She stopped beside Juan, close enough to catch him if he fell, close enough to feel the tremor in his body from the effort of standing. Tell them, Juan said quietly. Zara looked at Dante, saw recognition flash in his eyes. He knew her now, knew why she looked familiar. My name is Zara Bennett, she said, voice steady. 9 years ago, I was in the safe house when Mr. Jin's men attacked. My sister burned to death. I barely survived, and I spent years believing Jin Huan was responsible. She paused, let the weight of it fill the room. But he wasn't. He was used. Someone fed him false intelligence. Someone wanted that attack to happen, wanted civilians to die, wanted to create an atrocity that would destabilize the organization. She turned to the council. That someone was Dante Choi, and I have proof. She pulled out a flash drive, set it on the table beside the tablet. Communications between Dante and the Park family dating back 10 years, financial records showing payments for services rendered, and testimony from 3 survivors who witnessed him meeting with Park lieutenants the week before the attack, providing building layouts and civilian schedules. The silence was absolute. Dante laughed. It was a broken, desperate sound. You think they'll believe you, a nobody, an outsider? They'll believe the evidence, Juan said. They'll believe the recordings, and they'll believe me when I tell them you're a traitor who needs to die. He moved fast, faster than anyone expected from a man who'd just stood for the first time in 3 years. His hand closed around Dante's throat, lifting him, slamming him back against the wall with force that cracked the wooden paneling. You killed children, Juan said, voice deadly quiet. You destroyed families. You made me a monster in the eyes of people I should have protected, and you did it all for money. Dante clawed at Juan's hand, gasping, his face turning purple. Juan! Zara's voice cut through the rage. Don't! He looked at her, eyes black with fury, with 3 years of contained violence demanding release. He deserves to die, Juan said. He does, she agreed, but not like this. Not when the council needs to see justice, not revenge. It was the hardest thing she'd ever said. Every fiber of her being wanted Dante dead, wanted to watch him suffer the way her sister had suffered, but this wasn't about what she wanted. It was about what was right. Juan held her gaze for a long moment. Then slowly he released Dante, let him crumple to the floor, choking and gasping. Take him, Juan said to the guards. He'll stand trial before the full family council. Evidence will be presented. Judgment will be rendered. The guards moved, hauled Dante to his feet, dragged him from the chamber while he screamed protestations of innocence that no one believed. When he was gone, Juan turned to the council. I've led you for 15 years, built this organization from the ground up. Today you've seen me stand when I should have been completely disabled. You've seen proof of betrayal at the highest levels, and you've seen me choose justice over vengeance. He paused. I'm asking you to reaffirm your loyalty, to stand with me as we root out the rest of the corruption, to trust that I will always put this family first. His voice dropped. Or to challenge me now while I'm exhausted and you have the advantage. No one moved. Then one by one the council members stood, bowed, reaffirmed their loyalty in words and gestures unchanged for generations. When the last had spoken, Juan nodded once. This meeting is adjourned. He turned, took 3 steps toward the door, and collapsed. Zara caught him, felt his weight settle against her, felt his breathing harsh and ragged against her neck. I've got you, she whispered. I know, he said. And then so quietly only she could hear. You've always had me. The council filed out, leaving them alone. Zara lowered Juan into his wheelchair, hands gentle on his shoulders. You did it, she said. We did it. He looked up at her, exhaustion and triumph warring in his eyes. Together. His hand found hers, pulled her closer. She went willingly, kneeling beside the wheelchair so their faces were level. Thank you, he said, for stopping me, for reminding me what justice looks like. Thank you for trusting me with the truth. Her voice was soft, about everything. They stayed like that for a moment, hands clasped, breathing synchronized. The chamber around them was dark and heavy with history, but in their small circle of contact, something bright and fragile was taking shape, something that felt dangerously like hope. 3 days later, Dante's trial concluded with a unanimous verdict, death by execution, carried out within the week. Zara attended, watching as the man who'd orchestrated her sister's death finally paid for his crimes. She felt no satisfaction, only a hollow completion. That evening, she found Juan in the penthouse, standing by the windows without his wheelchair. He'd been practicing, getting stronger. It's done, she said. Yes. What happens now? He turned to face her. Now we choose. You have the file. You have your answers. You're free to leave, find a new life, disappear. Is that what you want? What I want, he said quietly, is for you to stay. Not as my assistant, not as an employee, as my partner, my equal, as someone who sees me, all of me, and chooses to stand beside me anyway. Zara crossed to him, took his hands. "I'm not your redemption," she said. "I can't erase what you've done. I don't want you to." His thumb traced the scar on her wrist. "I want you beside me while I do better, while I build something worth the lives it's cost, while I try to be the man you see when you look at me." "And what do I see?" "Someone worth saving," he said softly. She stood on her toes and kissed him, fierce and claiming and absolutely certain. His arms came around her, holding tight. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I'm staying," she whispered. "Not because I have to, because I choose to." "Then we'll build something new," he said, "together. Something worth all the broken pieces it took to get here." Outside, Seoul glittered in the darkness. Inside the penthouse, two people who should have been enemies held each other and breathed, made promises with their silence, chose each other despite every logical reason not to. They were both damaged, both dangerous, both carrying sins that would never be fully erased, but they were together. And in the brutal world they inhabited, that was more than a miracle. It was salvation, forbidden, fragile, and absolutely real.